And we welcome you to WrestleMania week on This Is Wrestling. Lee Versage, Zach McGibbon. Oh, it's WrestleMania week, Zachary. It's playoff season, hockey in a lot of different ways, but most importantly, it's WrestleMania week. How are you feeling? How is 2025 WrestleMania week treating Zach McGibbon?
It's not overly enthusiastic for WrestleMania question mark. Yeah, I think I'm all right. I think as the days go on, maybe it'll be good. I won't lie to you, Lee. You mentioned it. It's not only WrestleMania week, but a lot going on hockey-wise. And of course, Easter is also taking place this weekend. I am a little bit exhausted. I'm not going to lie. Had Seaway Valley over the weekend, and thanks to them for calling me in to fill in for commentary for their show. So want to thank them for that. And also hockey, Trenton Golden Hawks have moved on to the finals. And it sounds like the game is going to start this weekend. Game 1 against the Milton Menace, set to take place. So
my favorite team. I know you thought Stouffville was my favorite team, and I know you thought Halliburton was my favorite team. But I'm telling you, the Milton Menace. Oh, yeah, Zach. Like, just find different ways to break Trenton's heart.
Oh, man. I'm hoping not this year.
Oh, I know. Because the we in Trenton and you, which apparently together as a team,
can't get it done. Games.
Can't get it done in big moments. And you know what? It's not unlike predictions from you in big moments. Can't get it done. In big spots. So, in a segue, we're going to save our WrestleMania predictions for later this week in a separate episode. And we're going to talk out some scenarios. I might keep with what I say today on the prediction show. I might not. But we need to talk some scenarios out. And then our official, where Zach fumbles the ball, throws up all over himself.
Wow.
Prediction show coming up. We will record that later this week.
Didn't you predict Billy Starks to go all the way and win in the tournament, the Owen Hart tournament?
Yeah. Did you?
I did. I also did, but you did as well.
No.
You predicted her to win. I said she would make the final.
Yeah, but she didn't. So your prediction was wrong, and you threw up all over yourself.
So was yours.
Yeah, but that's not the point, Zach. One is separate from another, okay?
No, I think it's pretty related.
Keep the focus on...
Oh, I'm pretty focused on this one, actually.
Your Jack Perry predictions, your Jey Uso couldn't possibly win predictions. Like, let's focus on the big ones, okay?
New poll I'm going to put out there.
Mm-hmm.
What is a worse prediction? Me picking Jack Perry or Lee picking, who was her name? I can't even recall her name. Billy Starks to win the Owen Hart.
No, you picked Billy Starks.
Not to win, to get to the final.
Zach, she lost in the first round.
Yes.
So your prediction is wrong.
So is yours.
You can't put that poll out.
Of course we're going to put that poll out.
Listen, with all due respect to the Owen tournament in the AEW women's side, not quite of Royal Rumble stature. We can agree on that.
I don't think anybody expected Jey Uso to win. If they were, they're lying to themselves, or they're a part of the Anoa'i family.
I brought him up though as a possibility, and you
did bring him up, and I buried him, and look at how it's resulted.
And the Jack Perry, what do you mean? It's been pretty good here the last couple of weeks with Gunther and Jey Uso. I know you've watched it on Instagram, you've watched clips, you haven't watched the whole thing.
Well, that's how WWE wants me to watch the shows, because they're all about moments. So,
right. And if you're putting the Jack Perry up, make sure you get it in both sides, when he was going to win and when he was going to lose, and you screwed both of them up. Make sure you get that out in the poll as well.
I will keep it to the wins, because I think predicting them to win and then failing miserably is much more heartbreaking.
Listen, that's your shtick on this show, though. In big moments, you throw up. How is Zach going to throw up all over himself in this big moment?
I seem to recall picking John Cena to be in the main event against Cody Rhodes, or at least being in the main event challenging for the WWE title. for many months. I feel like I got that one pretty spot on.
All right. Well, you got one rung up the ladder. And so let's actually, as we get into WrestleMania talk here, like I said, we're gonna play some scenarios out. So let's start with what I think there's a whole lot going on in that main event on night number 1. And that is Roman Reigns and CM Punk and Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman in the middle. It is, as we know, Zach, it is going to main event night number 1, which, I don't know how you feel about that, as opposed to some of the other matches that they have kind of officially announced for night number 1. But I've been very hard on this three-way, as I need a reason, right? I need something to be at the end of this. Is it a number 1 contendership? We talked about that. So we didn't get that, but what we got on last night's Monday Night Raw was Seth Rollins basically saying it's the most important match in the history of the business, because Roman Reigns and CM Punk are going to kill the business if they win. And the only way the business survives, and he kept saying this, is that if he prevails, because they're not good for business. Is that good enough for you to be completely involved in this match? Or do you need more?
I need a lot more. This is very much a WWE storyline where really at the end of it all is Paul Heyman, and I'm interested to hear your reaction to this. I've said it to you before privately, but I'm going to say it on the air. But it seems like Paul Heyman is the human charm bracelet in this story, where is he going to align himself? Is he going to align with Punk? Yeah, we know he's going to be in the corner, but will he move forward with Punk after the show? Will he stick with Roman Reigns? And now Seth Rollins going out there saying that Heyman owes him a favor. I think those guys in ECW should have done that as well, so they could try and get their checks from Paul Heyman. Hey, you owe me a favor, Paul. Lots and lots of favors. But I digress. So this story hasn't really captivated me. I found that the favor being Paul Heyman being in CM Punk's corner would be pretty lackluster. I was expecting a whole lot more. I would have tolerated it being the main event, because you could at least make the argument of Paul Heyman being some sort of power broker or something, or having some sort of sway or influence because he is involved with Roman Reigns. But I don't think the story itself has been that strong. It's a very WWE storyline, and it just, me, Lee, I'm somebody that's like, there's a reason why I wanted to be like a number 1 contenders match or something like that. And I'm sure that after the match, like, this will set up for a future opportunity. But I just not really feeling this story, unfortunately.
Okay, so I agree with you that I'm not feeling the story. But let's play this out. What are some of the possible scenarios that we see? Because as the main event, it's not just the main event because those 3 are in it. Because there's some big matches, including Gunther and Jey Uso earlier that night on the card, which I find very interesting. So what are some of the possible scenarios in your mind how this plays out in the main event?
Well, I got to give you credit here, Lee. I do see a scenario where Paul Heyman could go with Seth Rollins in the end. That would be something different, something new, something a little bit more unpredictable. I don't know if it's main event storyline worthy in my mind, but it would be at least something that's different that they could do when it comes to the story. Um, I that's kind of the main one that's stuck in my mind. I wish they didn't just have it so upfront. It just goes back to other criticism I've had where they can never be subtle with stuff. They have the subtlety of a gunshot when it comes to some of their storylines. Like, they could have done this subtly and had like Paul Heyman lurking in the shadows or whatnot, and you make little hints of a possible Seth alliance. But then they just straight up did the angle last Monday Night Raw, if I recall, where Seth was about to do the curb stomp, and then he stops and says, "Now you owe me a favor," and now that puts it in people's minds. I would have liked it a little bit more unexpected. I think that would have hit greater. Now it's just kind of part of the match, and when you watch this match, it's just going to be a matter of not actually looking for what's going to happen wrestling-wise. It's just waiting for the angle to take place, which you know I love. So I see that scenario playing out, where Paul Heyman is going to have his allegiances changed. I think it would be interesting to be Seth. I don't know if I would call this a main event gimmick afterwards, but at least it would be something different.
So I'm trying to play this out, and you know how people say like you're playing checkers, but I'm playing chess.
Yep,
it's a big line.
4D chess.
Yeah, I feel like I'm doing that with you right now because. No, I'm just kidding.
I was gonna say, it's like, what's this fourth dimension we're entering here?
No, but I do think that there's a possibility that it's almost hit you in the face the last couple of weeks with Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins, because they're either not going to do it or they're gonna tease something. And I do think there's another possibility, I guess, because I kind of thought that was going to be the case, but I'm wondering like what the big picture is. Like, you know me, like to map it out backwards, and I was really mapping this one out backwards, and I've changed my mind a couple of times. So I do want to play the scenarios out and talk with you about them here. And then we'll come up with what we actually think in our prediction show. But I'm wondering why they've hit us in the face the last couple of weeks with this, that they're really going to do it. Like that, I thought they were going to do it until exactly as you described. They kind of hit us in the face with, "Now you owe me a favor." And all of a sudden, Seth Rollins is standing tall, having curb stomped them both, and laying them out at the end of the go-home show for Monday Night Raw. And he kept saying, so the business doesn't die. They're going to kill the business. And he went into like CM Punk, and he's lived off everybody else, and he comes in at the right time, and while everyone else has done the work, and, you know, Roman part-time guy, and, you know, kind of goes home when Seth Rollins is the one that's kind of been there, done that. So I don't know. I just think it's now all of a sudden it's a little bit too obvious that might happen with Paul Heyman. So what are some of the other possibilities?
Well,
I guess what I would ask you is that as you look ahead to, let's just say, until SummerSlam, the next 3 or 4 months, if I gave you a list, and you know people do pros and cons list, if I gave you a list of faces and heels, top 3 on each side, that the WWE is going to kind of plan to go forward with through the summer months and into SummerSlam. I have not prepared you for this, Zach. So,
okay,
what would you say your first instinct would be? And sometimes I do this specifically so that you don't have time to think about it, and it's your gut instinct.
Yeah.
So, top 3 on each side, faces and heels. They don't have to be in a particular order, but just the top 3 people on each side as this company moves forward here in the next 4 to 6 months.
Top 3 faces off the top of my head: Roman, Cody, and Punk. Heels, I guess Cena at this point. If you've got him for a couple more dates, that would definitely be a heel. Drew McIntyre off the top of my head. And Gunther, I guess, would be another heel I would throw in there. If you want to include The Rock, I guess. He's not there all the time. Currently a heel. But those are names I would throw out there.
Okay. So I happen to agree with you on the face list. I think Punk and Roman and Cody are all going to be massive faces still going forward here for the next little while.
Mm-hmm.
We threw out double turn with Cody and John Cena. I think that, that was a possibility before. I don't see that happening. I don't rule it out, but I don't see it happening. So here's where I'm conflicted, and it's the heel list. So I think it's John Cena. I think it's Paul Heyman. And I'm going to not count Paul Heyman, but maybe I should, because I think he might be number 1 on the list.
Okay.
And now I can't decide, but my gut instinct is if I'm going to include Paul Heyman on the list, I am going to put Seth Rollins on that list. I'm just trying to play out possibilities when I talk to you about this. It's not, I think this is happening for sure.
Right.
So I have really toyed in the last couple of weeks with the heel turn of Jey Uso. It was something that I thought about a couple of weeks ago. A lot of it makes sense to me about there's some things that tie back here, and it was an instinct that I had, and a couple of people have told me, well, you should go look at, people have kind of put some of the things together about this, which I think is interesting. I think it's interesting about, The Rock putting up 2 fingers when he did put up kind of the Cena fingers before. And it's the same 2 fingers that Jey Uso likes to put up. I think it's really interesting how Jey Uso won the Royal Rumble and kind of, I don't know, what would you say? Fluky, barely kind of just pushed John Cena out.
Mm-hmm.
Could John Cena have gone out on purpose? Because he knows what the big plan is? Maybe. I think that there have been some tie-ins to, and I would have to, I got to look it up again here, but there is some tie-in to Jey Uso coming out at the number 20 position, and something that The Rock had said previous to that. So I've really toyed with the idea of Jey Uso turning heel, which to me would turn Gunther into a face pretty quickly, because I think people want to cheer for Gunther. I think he's a hard guy to hate, because even if you hate him, you respect him. And how many people do you know that really dislike the guy?
Very little.
Yeah, he's kind of a cool heel, isn't he?
Yep.
Like, he's an easy heel to get behind. You could turn that guy face, no problem. And he's cut all ties with, former groups, so you can just cheer for him on your own. So look, I've really toyed with the idea. I'm still thinking about it. About Jey Uso turning heel and winning the World Heavyweight Championship and being with The Rock, because it certainly ties in with the bloodline. Because my question has always been, how does The Rock get back to the bloodline? So, first of all, before I go on to tell you some other possibilities, and that does tie back into, it ties back into the main event here. What do you think of that? And also, I now truly believe that Gunther and Jey Uso is going to open up WrestleMania on night number 1, which I don't love, but if anyway, that Gunther and Jey Uso are gonna start, and the triple threat is going to finish. So, just your thoughts on those things.
I'm gonna hit you with a John Cena classic line.
Okay,
a fine speech, but I don't like that idea. I've laid it out before how I'm not a big fan of Jey Uso, and I could understand where you want to freshen it up and you want to keep the bloodline going because it's the big money making idea. And we know with wrestling promoters that they will try and squeeze every ounce of some sort of money making program that they can out of it. And I would definitely think that Triple H / Paul Levesque would see an opportunity to try and extend the storyline and try and make more money out of it. But I think right now, like, look, I've not been a big fan of the Gunther Jey Uso stuff. There's been some highlights, but I really think over the last little bit, Jey Uso has kind of been exposed as a guy that maybe people like, but not to the extent that he should be challenging for a world championship. And so putting him in such a high-profile scenario with The Rock, I think would just be, like, to me, it's just continuing the idea of failing upwards with Jey Uso. So I don't love that idea, but I will throw this idea out there that's also out of the box if you want.
Okay, well, hold on, because I do want to talk about this a little bit more before we get there.
Okay.
And just some of the things that people are pointing out that where it's possible to see a Jey Uso heel turn. Number 1, on the first Netflix show on January the 6th, do you know who was with Jey Uso that night?
I remember the Drew McIntyre match, and then there was also Travis Scott on that night.
Yes, so Jey Uso and Travis Scott were side by side coming out of the crowd for the first Netflix. Okay, so we know where Travis Scott is aligned now. And Jey Uso was right with him at the beginning of the biggest program that they had just weeks before the Rumble. The Rock also that night on January 6th said specifically that he was 20 steps ahead of everybody else. Jey Uso was number 20 in the Rumble and won from that position. So did those two things help you? I would also include that when the heel turn of John Cena took place, The Rock put the 2 fingers across the neck and he looked awkward. We talked about him being awkward doing it.
Yep.
But that was the symbol of Jey Uso, which is maybe why it looked so awkward. So there's also the fact that, as you've mentioned, Jey Uso has not looked great to me during this time. And there are some people like Zach McGibbon who are quickly turning and not yeeting anymore. Now,
some never yeeted in the first place, but
yeah, I don't think that's the casual fan. I think the casual fan loves Jey Uso, but the hardcores have not liked this little run. So it would be, I think it's fair to say that he has lost some momentum. since the beginning of the Rumble until now. Whether that's on purpose or not, I don't know. But it hasn't exactly, I don't know, it hasn't exactly been the same. And I don't know. There's some correlations here that whether they're trying to put people on a different path or not, this is something that there's been 3, 4, 5 things that all sort of point to Jey Uso going back to The Rock as the champion. I'm trying to look. There's one more thing I wanted to point out before your thoughts on it to just see if it changes your mind at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get to it in a second because there was the 20 steps. There was the Travis Scott thing that I wanted to get to. There was the gesture. Yeah, and I guess maybe I was just thinking of the fact that, you know, the fans do seem to be kind of turning on him a little bit and being more negative towards him. So does all of that get back into that The Rock's master plan is really to have the soul and the family and to have Jey Uso as a part of it as your world heavyweight champion?
I don't know. It sounds a little tinfoil hatty to me. Those all seem like happenstances and trying to explain what seems to be trying to explain the actions of a man in The Rock that kind of goes on the whim of his own story and what he's thinking in his head. So it doesn't move me. And quite frankly, I think at the end of this all, I think the reason why they've got Jey Uso being pushed and the reason why he's in this title match in the first place with Gunther is so that they have the moment of the people yeeting when he wins the championship. And moving forward. And that doesn't mean that, you know, maybe on Raw they do some sort of angle or anything like that. But if there were to be any sort of angle with him turning heel, and I don't really see that at this point, I would think it would not happen at Mania. I think you would see that process being started at the Raw after Mania, because I think the whole idea behind Jey Uso getting pushed is because they wanted that visual of all those people in that arena, that stadium yeeting. And so I understand in terms of trying to relate it back to The Rock and the bloodline, but we also have to remember with The Rock that as soon as he saw Cody and what he wanted to do with Cody, he changed. He went out of the bloodline stuff and wanted to get into a program with Cody. Rock is going to follow where he thinks the money is going to be. And if he didn't think the money was in a bloodline program last year, the bloodline isn't exactly hotter this year. So why would he want to go into the bloodline program this year? So that's kind of my thought process with The Rock.
So I'm toying with the idea still, because I do think there's a lot of signs that do point to something like this happening. I would say that I'm a little bit more on your side right now than the side of Jey Uso actually turning heel. However, they have laid some of the groundwork to, and whether we like it or not, like I like reasoning, and I don't have to agree with the reasoning. I do like that there is reasoning, at least in some people's minds, that when you watch something, regardless of what company, because AEW is super bad at it right now. When you watch something, I at least need to know what you were trying to accomplish. Whether I think you executed it or I like the storyline, okay, well, that's different. But when I'm left with there's really nothing here, I don't like that part of it. So I'm leaning a little bit more because, as I said, I try and play everything back from the end. And I still think this ends up with The Rock against the face bloodline, which is made up of Roman and probably Jimmy and Jay. And I think there's an interesting part of Roman, Jimmy, and Jay being the face bloodline group, but with Jay as the champion and a little bit of jealousy from Roman, but still facing the heels. Do you know what I mean?
Yep.
I think there's something there. But I do think it's interesting on, like, I can't get out of my head that this is going to be The Rock's, like, ultimate, like, I guess maybe I dislike him enough, Zach, that I think, and from previous times where he's just tried to take over, I feel like he's going to completely take over.
Yeah.
And what that means to me is at the end of WrestleMania, The Rock and his world will be kind of, pun intended here, reigning supreme.
Very nice.
Yeah. Because also on night number 1 is Jacob Fatu against LA Knight for the United States Championship. Which I also think is interesting that all of those matches are taking place. But I do want to get back to the triple threat that's going to end night number 1, because that's what we started talking about in all of this.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it kind of relates back. I'm not convinced that Paul Heyman's just going to go with Seth Rollins and he'll be a Paul Heyman guy and that will be your team. The Rock doesn't show up very much, right?
Very rarely.
So if The Rock is going to continue to have a presence on television or continue to have a presence within the WWE and the storylines, but he's not going to be there all the time, I've really struggled with who, like, where that connection would be. Like, is Solo the guy? Like, all of a sudden Solo's doing all of the talking for The Rock? Who's doing all of the talking for The Rock if The Rock is going to take over, but he can't be there all the time? Who's your first instinct when I ask you that? Let's just say The Rock's going to take over WrestleMania, and at the end, it's going to be his show. But you know in the back of your mind, he's not going to be there very often. So somebody would have to step in and be that sort of, I don't want to call him a placeholder, but you know what I mean? The go-between, as the person who's there all the time and is doing most of the talking, but still has a boss in The Rock. Who do you think that would be?
Wouldn't it be John Cena? Based on how they've had The Rock take part in his heel turn, and Cena's got more dates coming up after Mania as well.
Yeah.
That's what I would feel like it would be.
Yeah, so do I, except I don't think there's enough dates. And I think there's a John Cena face turn coming at some point.
Yep.
I don't think it's this weekend, but I'm really hard pressed to believe that John Cena is still a heel come near the end of the year. And he doesn't have, like, I know his dates have been announced and he's got some dates, but I don't think he can be that guy if he's not there all the time.
Can I throw out this idea?
Yeah, because I'm going to tell you my idea, but you got another shot here.
Perfect. Not necessarily as the speaking type, but more as a presence type, so that you have the presence of The Rock as opposed to, the speaking. It was interesting what The Rock shared on social media recently on with the Rubik's Cube, and the shirt they had on was New Japan Pro Wrestling.
Yeah.
And wouldn't you know it, Lee, who was recently announced to be leaving New Japan Pro Wrestling?
That's Jeff Cobb.
That would be Jeff Cobb. Interesting backstory there in terms of, it sounds like they rushed. It sounded like he was going to leave, and then they moved up his leaving time, I guess, on New Japan, and is now going to have his final match. I think this weekend is the date against Tanahashi. And very interesting how it's all moved up so quickly. Is it crazy to say that, maybe The Rock is looking at a guy like Jeff Cobb and having him as sort of an enforcer type instead of being obviously a mouthpiece? Somebody who's there each week, he's new. Obviously, like we know what Jeff Cobb could bring to the ring. You already have, if you put him right away at The Rock, if The Rock says, hey, this is the guy that I've scouted, I went worldwide and I found this guy, and this guy is going to do my bidding. He is the, one of the toughest wrestlers I've ever seen, and he's going to go out there and maul people. Could that lead to some credibility for Jeff Cobb, as it sounds like Jeff Cobb is going to go to the WWE?
Who does Jeff Cobb remind you of in the WWE right now?
A little Jacob Fatu in there, a little bit more grounded, but
I would agree.
Yeah.
And I think if Jacob Fatu was fighting Jeff Cobb,
I would love to see that. I would love to see that.
So, yeah. I guess the question then goes back to, and I'm trying to piece the puzzle together here, folks. Do you believe that Jacob Fatu long-term is a face or a heel?
I think long-term is a much better heel.
I totally disagree.
Really?
Yeah. I think Jacob Fatu as kind of like Gunther. He's a heel that everyone kind of likes.
Mm-hmm.
So at some point, are you just going to let people like him?
Just embrace it?
So, okay, I'm now going to tell you what I think is a possibility. I think The Rock is going to form a big stable. And I think it's going to go against the bloodline, and they're going to be the people that he wants to be in charge of everything. And I think eventually that stable, that group are going to go head to head. And I'm sorry to say it, Zach, with the faces, with the bloodline, and those guys. And when I say it's Roman and Jimmy and Jay, and maybe it's Jacob as well. Because to me, eventually, those are guys you could cheer for. I think you can still cheer for Roman right now. A lot of people do. You kind of cheer for Jacob. A lot of casuals cheering for Jay. Can they bring Jimmy up? Maybe. But to do that, you need like a superior group, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like a group that would match, because those are big names. So the person that I think is going to be the go-between, first of all, is the person that they might explain has been working for The Rock all along, and that is Paul Heyman. Because when Paul Heyman was with Roman as his tribal chief, always the one telling him what to do, you could explain that back to that The Rock was always in Paul Heyman's ear, could you not?
You could.
Like, I don't even love the explanation, but I think it's an explanation that people go, well, okay, yeah. There's no reason why it couldn't have happened.
It would at least explain why Paul Heyman would have some power to make, decisions on the main event of the show and whatnot.
Right. And if The Rock is going to have Paul Heyman as the go-between, because really Paul Heyman's been loyal to The Rock through this entire process and kind of looking like he's loyal to Roman Reigns because The Rock wanted him and The Rock was in control of what was happening. He wanted Roman Reigns on top for that long, and he wants to get back to that. So I think The Rock forms a group at WrestleMania. And that group is John Cena and Seth Rollins and Paul Heyman. I'm going to stick with throwing Becky Lynch in there. And I could live with Jeff Cobb coming in and being exactly what you just told us he could be. But at the end of that, you have The Rock and the people that are underneath him. You have John Cena, world champion, WWE champion. You're going to have Seth Rollins, who won the triple threat with Paul Heyman, and I think probably goes on to beat Jey Uso. Like I told you before, that I thought Seth Rollins is going to beat Jey Uso fairly quickly after Uso wins. I still think that World Heavyweight Championship on Seth Rollins. You could convince me that Jacob Fatu is part of that team, and you bring Jeff Cobb in, and he's not really a part of all of that stuff, but you could convince me that Jacob Fatu is part of that group as the U.S. title holder. So I'll just list them back off for you and now kind of revamp what you think. On one side, you have Paul Heyman. You have Seth Rollins, and this is after WrestleMania, before something else happens.
Right.
But you have Seth Rollins win the triple threat. You have Paul Heyman and Seth Rollins as part of your team. They help John Cena. John Cena wins the WWE Championship. And you have a group to go up against Roman and Cody and Punk and Jimmy and Jay. Do you like the idea of Paul Heyman being the ultimate person in this, to be The Rock's loyal, has always kind of sold his soul to him, and have all the people that feel frustrated that got screwed over beforehand and think people are killing the business and the bloodline kills the business, and that's their MO of John Cena and Seth Rollins and maybe Becky Lynch. Do you like this idea? Maybe Jacob Fatu with that group as well.
That intrigues me more. I do like the idea of Paul Heyman with The Rock. I like the idea of The Rock kind of forming his own stable of guys and gals that he wants to see looking over the company. The only issue that I have, and I don't even necessarily, I like the idea. The only issue that you run into with that sort of stuff is you start to run into the issue of, you want to try and balance it to where you don't want that heel group saying the company stinks, the company sucks, and whatnot, and saying too many truths about the company sucks and the company stinks. Because we've seen in the past from many promotions, when you start to say the company stinks and the company sucks and all these things are wrong and what you like is wrong, it starts to impact fan trust in the company itself. We've seen it happen with AEW, where they went too far in on saying about how the company has been doing. WCW obviously is a massive one that gets looked at. WWE at times in its history as well, especially in the late 2010s and that 2019 era. So you just gotta be wary of that line that's there, because then it turns into an actively killing, business killing group. But the idea of, this super group that's kind of being made, and especially with what The Rock has been sort of teasing in terms of trying to find guys that could take that next step. And he's, we mentioned in the promo months back about, the Instagram followers and being this big time star. That's an interesting idea. And it would certainly help as well for later down the road. You've got the Survivor Series that could fill out a Survivor Series War Games match as well. So, interesting. I think there's some interesting ties that they could put in there.
What if I put Gunther in that group?
I feel like Gunther.
And he retains.
Huh. I don't know. I don't
Okay.
know if Gunther would fit the vibe. I feel like Gunther is better off on his own.
Yeah, I do too. I'm just trying to put ideas out.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think that this idea is Paul Heyman as the guy who's ultimately been loyal to The Rock all along and really separating from Roman Reigns. The other reason why I like this idea is because eventually the bloodline is going to win. Right? Like eventually you get to the point where if Roman and Jimmy and Jay and whoever else are on the other side, they're going to overcome these odds. Cena's going to go away. And I think you can dissolve that group later and they're going to be okay. Like Paul Heyman will always be okay. Seth Rollins will be okay. I don't see if they want to form together for a while and then eventually, like in a year, go their separate ways when Cena goes, I think you can do that without an issue. I like Paul Heyman as the guy that's ultimately been loyal to The Rock. And I'm just sort of playing in my mind right now with how they're going to, like, what comes underneath that. Like, if there's The Rock as the president and then the vice president is Paul Heyman, for lack of a better term.
Mm-hmm.
Who are the players? Who are the people underneath that? If the levels go The Rock, then Paul Heyman, then who? John Cena will be one of them, I think. I think Seth Rollins has a decent chance to be another. And I'm actually flip-flopping on Jey Uso. Like, I don't know. Will Jey Uso be one that wins the title and ends up going on that route because of all the things that I pointed out before to you? And like, he's the one that kind of sold his soul. And that's why I think more than the gestures and stuff like that, Zach, the one thing that I'm having trouble coming to grips with or figuring out, I guess, is how easily Jey Uso pushed John Cena out at the end of the Royal Rumble. I think that's really odd. And that Cena just all of a sudden was out. He was just out. You could explain that away like he meant to do that because the ultimate plan was for Jey Uso to go on because John Cena knew that he'd just be put in that Elimination Chamber match anyway, and he was going to win. And it also explains who is the one that came back down to cost not only CM Punk, but how did John Cena win the Elimination Chamber?
Through interference from Seth Rollins.
Yep. Sure did. And it was because of Seth Rollins that John Cena won. There is some of me that thinks that that's not a coincidence either. Now, Seth Rollins was dressed all in black on Monday night. Did you see that?
I did.
Michael Cole made a very poignant and almost over-the-top reference to the Shield chair.
Almost over the top?
It was over the top.
I was gonna say.
It was Sylvester Stallone. It was over the top.
I love that film. It's a guilty pleasure film.
Yeah. However, what do you think that's a part of it? He looked like a Shield member. Like, he looked not exactly like a Shield member, but it certainly had some Shield ties to it. He hits Roman with the chair that Michael Cole goes over the top with the Shield reference. I don't know. Feels like a new Shield. Something like that. It all just makes sense to me. The one I'm having trouble with is Jey Uso, to be honest with you. Because I totally agree with what you're saying. They want their WrestleMania moment of the entire crowd yeeting. But once you get that and he wins the title, you could turn him instantly. You don't need that anymore, do you?
Yeah, that would be like a short title reign if need be.
No, but I'm saying you could turn him heel and keep the title on him.
You could. If you wanted to extend the title reign, sure.
But I think Seth Rollins is the guy that's going to end up being one of the major players going forward. I also think too, like if you think about even to the backstory of last year, what was the main event of night number 1 last year, Zach? Do you remember?
I actually don't remember. So long ago now.
I know.
It was the tag team match. Rock and it was Rock that was in there. I know it was Cody and Seth and Rock and Roman.
Yeah, Rock and Roman against Cody and the other guy. The other guy that we kind of laughed at. You did, I remember. I mean, I would never laugh at him. But
I was practically mocking him.
Right. So do you think they can recall that and go back and go, okay, Seth Rollins has done everything for the business. He even became the laughing stock at last year's WrestleMania when he stepped out of the way and he came to support Cody and he looked like a dummy. Right?
Oh, yes.
And so getting back at Cody and joining a group with John Cena, I don't know. Don't you think it makes too much sense? I just see a lot of the things here for Seth Rollins in, like, he looked like a dummy last year for sure.
Yeah.
Where it's like, why is he even in the match? And he stepped aside, did he not? He lost the title to McIntyre, right?
Yep.
Who lost it quickly thereafter to Damian Priest. But I'm just thinking, like, even outside of the storyline of the business, a lot of what Seth Rollins has been talking about is he's the guy that's there all the time. He's always there. Roman's not. Punk's not. He's the guy that's always there. And then he goes in and they ask him to lose to Drew McIntyre and then go and help Cody out. Be there for him. And what's he done since? Not much. I'm definitely talking myself into Seth Rollins standing at the end of night 2. There's just a lot of parts here that make it seem like he's going to join up with John Cena and join up with The Rock and be in that group. And quite frankly, like, I'm not a big Rock fan and I could do without Cena.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm interested in the main event and how it's all going to play out from the storyline perspective, from what they did in Toronto Elimination Chamber. So I'm happy about that. But I'm not like, oh my God, John Cena, can I get to a match in the last 6 months of his career? Like, I'm not that invested. And if I just see heel John Cena for a couple weeks after WrestleMania and there's not much else going on, I'm probably out. So you always have to ask yourself, WrestleMania is kind of a big point where it's like the end of one season, but the beginning of another. There is a bit of a lull. So how's the WWE going to get through it? Well, what if they form this group? And Cena's got limited dates, right?
Yep.
Well, you still need someone to be there all the time. And that person there all the time is the guy that's saying, I'm the guy that's here all the time. Seth Rollins. Anyway, I've worked myself into a shoot.
I was gonna say, can I be the pessimistic voice here, and
Yep.
the one that will bring the mood down and be negative? Because while I would like to believe in that scenario, and I actually do like the idea of Paul Heyman being associated with The Rock, because I think it would certainly help him in terms of reinvigorating him, because he's just been a caricature at this point over the last couple of years. So him being kind of the mastermind and being involved in something with The Rock, where The Rock wants to change the business, and we know that Paul Heyman likes to attach himself to, people and ideas that can change the business, because that would mean he gets associated with it, right? So I like all of those ideas. My pessimistic and my negative attitude towards this company makes me believe that they have not even thought that far ahead when it comes to what they want to do. I think with a lot of the stuff that you're seeing right now, I think the build for this upcoming WrestleMania has been lackluster. There's been some moments in between, but we know what this company is. It's a moments company. And while there are certainly ideas that you presented that would be intriguing, I look at the booking patterns with Triple H, Paul Levesque, and he's very, very slow when it comes to making things big and whatnot. And even the stuff that is big to the WWE fan wouldn't be as big for me. And so I look at all of this, and there are certainly some interesting ideas that could be floated about. There are certainly directions that they could go. What you're kind of proposing are big company-wide, is essentially a big company-wide storyline that's kind of overhanging what the WWE, and I just don't see that happening, unfortunately. I think it's kind of getting through into the next WrestleMania weekend. I'm not saying there won't be big angles. I'm sure there'll be some big angles that they'll work on, especially with the Cody and John Cena stuff that they want to establish. So they want to have the big moments coming out of the show so that they can intrigue you for the storylines after WrestleMania. But I'm not going into this with as high of expectations and wondering what this angle means and what this angle means, because I think a lot of that, with the way that storylines have played out, have been more happenstance as opposed to thoughtful booking ideas. But that's kind of the pessimistic side of me speaking through. And you know how I feel about Triple H and in terms of his booking. I feel like he has taken an idea with the Bloodline and Cody that he inherited from the previous regime, and he has been coasting off of that for a while. Now he's kind of at a point after all this build-up for Mania where, the Bloodline story is running out of steam. Cody is not as hot as he was a few years ago, and now he's got to come up with an idea to try and reinvigorate stuff. And we've seen with a build here where it's kind of more of his ideas coming to the fold, and I'm not exactly encouraged by what I'm seeing from television. So it would certainly stun me, but I am going into this not with the mindset of I think we're going to see a big company changing angle going in and out of WrestleMania.
I also wanted to ask you about, so night number 1 is going to have Reigns, Rollins, and Punk as your main event. My guess is that Gunther and Jey Uso will open up the show.
Mm-hmm.
But on night number 1, both of the people who won the Royal Rumble and earned world title opportunities at WrestleMania, and the way that they build the Royal Rumble, and they have, is if you win the Royal Rumble, you will get a world title opportunity. But they also, over and over and over again, Zach, have told us you're in the main event of WrestleMania. Now, with 2 nights, you can still be in the main event on either night. Nobody who won the Royal Rumble, Jey Uso or Charlotte Flair, will be in any main events coming up at WrestleMania. they have world title opportunities. Charlotte's will be in the middle of the card of night number 1. And I'm guessing that Gunther and Jey Uso will be the first out of the gate. But we know they're both not going to be main eventing WrestleMania. Does that matter to you?
Yes. I don't like when they, if you're going to promote stuff for Rumble and you got to have at least one of them be the main event. And just because Jey Uso calls himself main event Jey Uso doesn't mean he is in the main event. So the stuff matters to me. Maybe it matters more than it should. But when you're promoting something like that, and you're promoting that these guys are main eventing, especially on a big show like WrestleMania, it does kind of annoy me where you're not even getting at least one of these people in the main event on either night. So
I agree, and it annoys me too, because that's a question I would love to ask at a press conference. You build a Royal Rumble as the winner of the Royal Rumble will be in the main event of WrestleMania, and you have two options, and neither of them are main eventing either night. And the person who won the Royal Rumble in both cases are, well, I won't say less important. I don't know that anybody's more important than Charlotte Flair still, but she has not had a good run from the Rumble to WrestleMania. And you're basically saying that how many people that didn't win the Royal Rumble that are main eventing? You have 5 people, 5 men. John Cena, Cody Rhodes, who was the champion already, but John Cena, Cody Rhodes, Roman Reigns, CM Punk, Seth Rollins. 4 of them were in the Royal Rumble. They all lost. They're all main eventing.
Yep.
The guy who won is not main eventing. That bothers me a lot.
Yeah.
And I wish I could be the person asking that question to somebody that would give you a straight answer. And I know they probably would never give you a straight answer, and that they would say that going after the world championship at WrestleMania any one of these matches could be a main event, but it's not, right? And especially because you're the one, WWE, that put this whole CM Punk has never main evented a WrestleMania, and now he's main eventing a WrestleMania, even though it's on night number 1. You're promoting it as the main event.
Yep.
To get that over for Punk. So this is the stuff that gets glossed over that does bother me a lot. And I'll give them a one-off because but Royal Rumble's in Saudi Arabia next year. And I wonder how many people are going to be watching at a completely different time. And I wonder if this is the start of a pattern where if you win the Royal Rumble, you get a match at WrestleMania for the title, but it might be in the middle of the card at night number 1, because that's exactly where Charlotte Flair is. Which is anything but the main event.
Yeah.
And you could argue is actually the worst position to be in. It's not opening night number 1. It's not closing night number 1. And it's not even on night number 2. Which theoretically is the more important night. So I don't love that. And I think that's an oversight that WWE fans will tell you, don't worry about it. It's like, no, you build it as this, and I hope it doesn't take away from the mystique of the Rumble. I really do. But for me, it kind of has. And if they don't correct it next year, then now I'm on that slope of the Royal Rumble doesn't mean as much. And as a fan, I don't want that to be the case. But I'm very worried about that, with both matches not being the main event and the Rumble in Saudi Arabia at a completely different time next year, where not as many people are going to be watching. So I'm very worried that we're on that slope right now, Zach.
Yeah, I don't love it. And I kind of had to laugh when you were saying if you could ask it at the press conference, but we got to ask Triple H how great he is and how great of a booker he is and how everything's great, and nothing could be wrong in the WWE. So
Yeah, but it's a legitimate question. It's not a.
Oh,
To
I'm
me,
not
it's not a.
disagreeing with that. I'm
Yeah, to
just,
me, it's not a negative thing. It's a you build the Royal Rumble as you'll be in the main event of WrestleMania, and both people who won aren't. How come? Like that's hey, you told us something. You've done something different. Why? It's pretty simple, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not. I don't think it's negative. It's facts.
Yep. Well,
All right.
unfortunately, I think the WWE fan base would find that negative and killing
Yeah.
the vibes of the press conference because we gotta have positive vibes, you know.
All right. Well, I still have some positive vibes. We'll see by the prediction show if you still have some positive vibes,
We'll
Zach.
see.
But this has been fun, but I think this is an important show to sort of talk about and play out some of the scenarios and the important matches. We obviously didn't hit on a lot of what's happening at WrestleMania, so we'll do that in our prediction show.
Mhm.
But this has been fun because I think it's important to talk about some of these ideas and flesh them out a little bit.
Yeah, kind of laying the foundations for the prediction show later this week and kind of build off of from there. And who knows? We'll see what the next couple of days bring in terms of what's been announced, the vibes heading into WrestleMania. But yeah, it'll be interesting. I like I said, I'm not as upbeat and feeling it this year as I have been with other years. I've just not been into this build, quite frankly. But who knows? Maybe once we get in the prediction show and we break down some of these matches, I kind of look with a different eye for some of them. Who knows?
Who knows?
Who knows?
Is Kevin Knight going to be on a pay-per-view? We'll see.
He had a good match. What do you want from me?
Listen, there's holes in all the companies. Okay.
Yes.
I'm actually, as we record this on a Tuesday, I'm very much looking forward to this spring breakthrough Dynamite because it looks like one of the better Dynamites in a while, at least on paper, because this company has been struggling as of late.
Mhm.
And as a guy, I just would like to see them get back on track as a wrestling fan. And I want the WWE to get back on track. I really do. Like I want it all to be great, and hopefully it can.
Trust me. If The Rock comes back and creates this big money drawing angle, it's only better for us because more people will be tuning into us and listening for our thoughts on things. So trust me, I want the WWE to be putting out good stuff, but I also have to be honest with what I'm watching. So,
yep, we'll try and get Zach out of his pessimistic point of view, and it's just really nice as the guy that does not have to be construed as the negative guy for once on any show. Yeah, I
big
appreciate
vibes
you taking
podcast.
That.
It is a big vibes podcast. So
yeah, but you taking that mantle as the negative guy and the guy who throws up all over himself with the predictions. I'm really looking forward to the prediction show coming up in a couple of days. For Zach McGibbon, I'm Lee Versage. Thanks for listening to This Is Wrestling.